post salad, carry it home on a post salad.
What's up, guys? Welcome to this video on Elvis is the Man. I want to give you a full review on the book I just finished reading called Being Elvis: A Lonely Life by Ray Connolly. A friend of mine on Instagram recommended this book to me, and after I heard an interview with this guy talking about how he actually met and interviewed Elvis in 1969, I was intrigued by his assessment of Elvis, and I had to buy the book. The book was written in 2016 and is about 700 pages. I read it on my iPhone, so I think it's probably half that if you buy the original copy. His views on Elvis are a lot like mine. That's one of the reasons I'm so fond of this book. I finished it a couple weeks ago. The book is a typical biography, starting from Gladys and Vernon, before Elvis's birth and then after his death. The book not only is a timeline of his life that I would recommend to a new Elvis fan that would like an overview of his career and personal life, but it also focuses on the book's title, which is his loneliness, and what made him tick and what contributed to his loneliness. I like that the author points to Andreas, Colonel Parker, as a man that he and I believe used Elvis for quick cash and bullied him into following his own orders, but also holding Elvis accountable for the part he played in it. Talking about Elvis going along with decisions made in his career by Andreas, not having the courage to speak up for himself, so he plays devil's advocate. He points the blame on Elvis as well. Elvis seeming to take the quick cash with the movies, although the bad scripts were costing him his career, and he knew it. Knowing that Hal Wallace was using Elvis to finance his better, more artistic movies for other actors and actresses, but then still signing the contracts year after year. So he doesn't just say that everybody but Elvis was to blame, he also points the finger at Elvis as well. So let me give you a few examples from this book that will help you better understand what I mean. Ray talks about Elvis's early life, how he enjoyed his popularity in Memphis when he was first beginning to become known in like 54, 55, when That's Alright Mama was an overnight hit, and songs like Blue Moon of Kentucky, Mystery Train were popular on the country charts in the South. He was a local hero, really. He could walk the streets, he finally had money to buy clothes, have a decent car, but he was not mobbed. He was just greeted with a smile and a handshake, and they were just happy to see him. Talking about some of his first meetings with Parker, how Andreas told him, quote, "If you ever do anything to disgrace me," he would be out, meaning Parker would be out, as if Elvis were lucky to have him rather than the other way around. Connolly tells how Elvis believed Parker when he told Elvis he'd go back to obscurity if he lost him. So you got to remember, Elvis was 19 at the time, and he knew what it was like to be poor, and was very naive and impressionable. Like many of us when we're that young, he tended to believe everybody and not question adults. His mom had her suspicions about Andreas and actually prophesied that he would work Elvis to death, and how true did that turn out? Parker gave Elvis his first taste of international freedom by getting him on TV, getting him signed with a label RCA that was able to actually distribute his records across America and not just locally or in the South, because Sun Records didn't have the push, didn't have the money to really, and the distribution power to get Elvis's records out like a big label like RCA could. Then Parker got him in the movies, so Parker seemed to be the reason in Elvis and Vernon's mind why Elvis became so rich and famous, and when things started to go bad right as he got out of the army with the silly GI Blues script, Elvis was extremely hesitant to buck the system, thinking he owed Parker his respect, and challenging him would be a mark of disloyalty. For example, when Elvis and the guys were late for a gig in the early 50s, so like 54, 55, Parker withheld some of his pay. Can you believe that? When I read these stories in the book, and as I come across them everywhere, I'm just filled with anger and like a feeling of sorry for Elvis because he had to go through all this. Another interesting story that Connolly brings out is Elvis's insecurities during the screen test. Elvis told Hal Wallace that he was nervous about his stammer, and Wallace told him that it would be okay, it would make his character seem more realistic. The book also reveals Parker's disinterest early on with the idea of Elvis touring Europe. His records, like Don't Be Cruel, were going #1 in the US and Britain, and he thought of an international tour seemed logical. But Andreas was never interested. Keep in mind, if Parker was all about the money, as many people said, including Scotty and Bill, why wouldn't Andreas capitalize on the pot of gold over the rainbow, so to speak? Like I said, this book breaks down Elvis as a real person and reveals his true personality. Ray brings up even in Elvis's life in the late 50s, where he actually went to church around Easter, because Elvis, once a regular churchgoer, didn't go nearly as often because of his hectic touring schedule and his belief, which was probably true, that he would just cause a scene if he were to go there. So after service that Easter, he talked to his pastor and he told him something kind of surprising, really, if you think about it. He says, quote, "I'm the most miserable young man you've ever met. I've got more money than I can ever spend. I have thousands of fans out there, and I have a lot of people who call themselves my friends, but I'm miserable." And Ray goes on to say that later at Christmas, he told his mom the same thing, and she gave him a bit of advice that I believe he was lacking as the 60s wore on, and he could have used, and especially as the 70s wore him out. Gladys told Elvis, "Son, I don't rightly know the answers to your problems, but I do know that if you open up your Bible and read it every day, you'll find out the answers in there somewhere." This is on page 303 in the book. Jumping to the mid-60s, where Elvis now realized that he was purposefully being used to make money in Hollywood by producers who looked at him only as a cash cow that they could use to finance Oscar-worthy scripts for actors that they felt could actually deliver a solid dramatic performance. When movies like Flaming Star and Wild in the Country, Elvis's early 60s dramatic roles, tanked at the box office, while Blue Hawaii made the same year did phenomenally well, and the soundtrack even sold more than the Elvis's Back album, Parker and Elvis rode that horse till the movie soundtrack combo died. Elvis went along with the cash flow idea even though he knew it wasn't good for his image. Elvis made 3 times as much on his movies in a year than his music, for only 3 weeks worth of work per movie. Parker also didn't want Elvis touring because it was less money, and Parker would actually have to get off his butt and promote the tour rather, and go ahead of him city to city, rather than just, sitting on set. Ray tells how NBC wanted to film the 61 Pearl Harbor show, but Parker demanded too much money. NBC wanted a live album also, but those plans fell through. Parker demanded too much. Also, and this was surprising to me, a reported 43-city tour in late 63 was suggested by RCA, but Andreas wanted $1 million up front, and RCA wasn't willing to do that. And that was just before the Beatles became famous, keep in mind. Elvis could have used that boost. I could tell more stories from this great book, but this video would be way too long. I'll jump forward to 1977, where Ray says Elvis was home recuperating after his June tour and came across an article in a fan club magazine where it was suspected that Colonel Parker wasn't a U.S. citizen and that he was actually from Holland. Now, the book says that Elvis was actually was intrigued by this, and that he actually heard a rumor a few years before that Andreas was an illegal alien, but he dismissed it. I kind of wonder if Elvis put 2 and 2 together when he was reading this as to why, okay, this makes sense why Parker doesn't want me to go overseas, and he always has some type of excuse. But this was 77, and he probably was like, you know what, I'm not in the frame of mind to do this anyway. I do commend Parker for his mindset on the Elvis What Happened book. Elvis was very worried about it. He did bring it up to Andreas, and Parker didn't try to comfort him, but he did tell him not to worry, that it'd sell tickets, which was probably true. Parker never got over the idea that Elvis wasn't a dancing chicken on a hot grease pan, only there to sell tickets. He was a human. This book tells that inside story, and I really suggest you guys all read it out. Not only for the hardcore fans that have been around a long time, but also this is a good book for a new Elvis fan to really not only just get a rundown of his life, but maybe what made him tick and who he was as a person that would help them understand Elvis. Also, it's my opinion that they used this book in a large degree to give some type of a framework and a reference for the movie. You can see in this picture here that Austin is pictured with the book, and this book, the movie really mirrors the book. and you'll have to find that out to read it. And I suggest you guys do read it. I hope you've liked this. Tell me in the comments what you think about this info and the book, if you've read it, if you plan on reading it, and also leave a like. It helps to expand and grow the channel. In the description of this video is a link to a few other pages that I run, a Bible and fitness page. And if you're into more hardcore type things like FTD reviews, things I don't normally put on YouTube, check out my Patreon as well. The links are in the description below. Thanks for listening, guys. Talk to you next time.